He left me for another woman. But he made one mistake. He thought I would break quietly. He had no idea what I was about to do next. The morning started like any other, but something about it felt wrong. The air in the apartment was unusually still, as if even the walls were holding their breath. Outside, New York was already awake. Horns blaring, subway rumbles vibrating through the streets, distant sirens cutting through the cold autumn air, but inside, everything felt paused. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the half-empty coffee mug in my hand. It had gone cold, just like the last few weeks of my marriage. Behind me, the ticking clock on the wall sounded louder than usual. Each second felt like it was counting down to something I didn't understand yet. "Daniel!" I called softly. No answer. That silence wasn't new anymore. It had become a language in our home. Daniel had changed months ago. At first, I thought it was stress from work. He used to come home late, exhausted, barely speaking, collapsing onto the couch with his phone still in his hand. Then the excuses started changing. Business meetings, late dinners, emergency calls, and then her name appeared, Sophie. I remember the first time I saw it, a notification lighting up his phone while he showered. Just a message preview. "I missed last night. You should have stayed longer." My hands had gone cold in that moment, but I didn't say anything. I couldn't, because when you love someone deeply, you start lying to yourself before they ever lie to you. The apartment around me was once filled with warmth. We built it together, Sunday mornings cooking pancakes, late-night movies on the floor, arguments that ended in laughter. But now, even the furniture felt like it belonged to strangers. I walked toward the window, pulling the curtains aside. The city looked beautiful from up here. People rushing, living, unaware of the quiet collapse happening behind closed doors in apartment 12B. That's when I heard the front door open. My heart jumped, but I didn't turn immediately. Slow footsteps, keys dropping onto the table, the faint scent of expensive perfume. Not mine. "Hey," Daniel said. Just one word. Flat. Empty. I finally turned. And there he was. Same man I married, but not the same eyes. Those eyes no longer searched for me. They passed over me like I was part of the background. "Where were you?" I asked quietly. He loosened his tie, avoiding my gaze. Work. That word again. His shield. His escape. But I had learned something painful over the past few months. Truth doesn't always shout. Sometimes it hides in the smallest cracks. "I called your office," I said. "They said you left early." A pause. A very small pause, but enough. Then he sighed. "I had meetings." I nodded slowly. My nails dug into my palm, but I kept my voice steady. "Meetings, for her?" The air shifted instantly. For the first time in weeks, his eyes met mine properly. And in that moment I saw it. Guilt, fear, and something worse, relief. Like he had been waiting for me to say it out loud. "You've been imagining things," he said finally. But his voice shook, and that was all the confirmation I needed. Silence stretched between us. Heavy, sharp, unforgiving. Outside, thunder rolled far in the distance, though the sky was still clear. I stepped closer to him. "I gave you everything," I said quietly, "and you replaced me without even telling me why." Daniel looked away, jaw tightening. "It's not like that." But it was. We both knew it, because love doesn't disappear overnight, unless it was already leaving long before you noticed. I walked past him toward the bedroom. My hands were steady now, almost too steady. Inside, something had shifted in me too. Not broken, but awakening. On the bed, I saw his jacket, and inside the pocket a receipt. A restaurant I had never been to. 2 names. 2 dinners. 2 lies. I placed it back exactly where I found it. When I walked out again, Daniel was still standing in the same place, like he didn't know whether to stay or run. "I think you should leave," I said calmly. He blinked. "What?" "This isn't our home anymore," I continued. "It stopped being mine the moment you stopped choosing me." For a moment, he didn't move. Then slowly he picked up his keys. But before he left, he said something I will never forget. "You'll regret this when you calm down." I almost laughed, because he still didn't understand. I wasn't breaking. I was beginning. And this was only the first crack in everything he thought he controlled. The door closed behind him, and for the first time in months, the silence didn't hurt. It promised something else. The silence after Daniel left didn't feel like emptiness anymore. It felt like space, like something inside me had finally been cleared out after months of suffocation. I stood in the middle of the apartment, long after his footsteps faded down the hallway. The city outside continued its usual chaos, sirens, traffic life, but inside, everything had shifted into something colder, sharper, clearer. I walked slowly through each room, noticing things I had stopped seeing. His coffee cup still on the counter, a forgotten watch on the bedside table, a faint perfume stain on the pillow that wasn't mine. Every object felt like a piece of a story I had been excluded from while still being forced to live inside it. When I finally sat down, it wasn't sadness that hit me. It was memory. I remembered when Daniel and I first moved into this apartment. We were broke, exhausted, hopeful in that reckless way young couples are. We painted the walls ourselves. We argued over curtains. We laughed on the floor eating takeout because we couldn't afford a dining table. Back then, he used to look at me like I was his future. Now he looked at me like I was a mistake he hadn't fully corrected yet. My phone buzzed. A message. Not from him. From Sophie. My fingers froze before I even opened it. I think you should tell her. It's getting harder to pretend. A second message followed almost immediately. I'm tired of hiding. I stared at the screen for a long time. The words didn't shock me. They confirmed what I had already stepped into but refused to fully accept. So this wasn't just an affair. It was a replacement. A planned exit. Something in me tightened. Not pain but focus. I stood up, walked to my laptop, and opened it slowly. My hands were steady now in a way they hadn't been for months. Because something strange happens when heartbreak crosses a certain line. It stops being emotional and starts becoming strategic. I opened the shared accounts first. Joint savings, investments, property records, everything we built together, legally bound in ways Daniel clearly thought I would never question. But what he forgot was simple. I wasn't just his wife. I was the person who handled everything while he focused on work. I knew passwords he had forgotten he gave me. I knew accounts he didn't even check anymore. And most importantly, I knew exactly how much of everything was in my name too. The apartment suddenly felt different as I moved from room to room collecting documents, passwords, and files. Each step wasn't emotional anymore, it was deliberate. By midnight, I had compiled everything. Every shared asset, every financial link, every weakness in the structure he thought was solid. And then I saw something that made me stop completely. A business account transfer. Large sum. Recently moved. To a separate account. Sophie's name wasn't just in his messages. It was in his finances. That was the moment something inside me fully shifted. Not anger. Not heartbreak. Clarity. Because betrayal is one thing. But planning your replacement while still using your wife's stability to build your new life? That's something else entirely. I closed the laptop slowly. Outside, thunder finally cracked across the sky, shaking the glass window. And in that reflection, I saw myself, not the woman who was left, but the woman who was about to respond. I whispered into the empty room, barely audible. You shouldn't have made me part of your plan, Daniel. Because now, I was going to become part of his ending. Morning came without softness, no gentle sunlight, no calm recovery. Just a pale, gray light pressing through the windows like it didn't care what had happened the night before. I hadn't slept, not because of heartbreak, but because my mind refused to stop connecting dots Daniel never thought I would see. The apartment felt different now. Not broken, not abandoned, controlled, like I was finally the one watching it instead of being trapped inside it. I made coffee slowly, deliberately. The smell filled the kitchen, warm and familiar, but even that comfort felt distant now. My thoughts were already somewhere else, somewhere colder. By the time my phone rang, I already knew it would be him. Daniel. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. What do you want? I asked calmly. There was a pause on the other end. That hesitation told me everything before he even spoke. I need to come by, he said. I leaned against the counter. Why? Another pause. Sophie and we need to talk properly. About everything. There it was. Not regret. Not apology. Just logistics. Like I was a problem he needed to close neatly. I looked out the window. The city below was waking up fully now. Cars moving. People rushing. lives continuing as if nothing had collapsed behind closed doors. Fine, I said finally. Come. And I hung up before he could say anything else. He arrived 40 minutes later. I heard the elevator, then footsteps, then the key turning, except the door wasn't locked anymore. I had stopped locking it after he left. Not out of weakness, out of decision. Daniel walked in slowly, like he wasn't sure what version of me he would find. He looked tired, not physically, but emotionally stripped down. The confidence he used to carry like armor was thinner now. Behind him, Sophie stepped in. I hadn't seen her before. She was younger than I expected, carefully put together. Perfect hair, perfect posture, the kind of woman who thinks control is the same thing as strength. Her eyes scanned the apartment quickly, judging, measuring. I didn't react, because reactions give power away. Daniel cleared his throat. We should talk. I nodded toward the living room. Sit. Sophie hesitated, then sat first. Daniel followed, but not comfortably. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then Daniel exhaled. This has gotten complicated, he said. I almost smiled. Complicated, as if betrayal was a scheduling issue. Sophie crossed her arms. We didn't want it to go like this. That was the first time she spoke directly to me. Her voice was softer than I expected, carefully rehearsed. I tilted my head slightly. And how did you want it to go? Silence. Because there is no honest answer to that question. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Look, I made a mistake in how I handled things. A mistake. Not a choice. Not a betrayal. Just a mistake. I walked slowly toward the window, letting them sit in their discomfort for a moment. Outside, the city moved like nothing ever broke it. I saw the accounts, I said quietly. The shift in the room was immediate. Daniel's posture changed. Sophie's expression tightened. I continued, still facing the glass. The transfers, the joint withdrawals, the account you opened in her name. Daniel stood up. That's not. I turned. And for the first time, I let my voice carry something sharp. Don't insult me by pretending I don't understand what you did. He stopped. Because I wasn't crying. I wasn't begging. I wasn't breaking. Sophie looked between us. We can fix this, she said quickly. We just need to separate things properly. That word again. Properly. As if destroying a marriage had a correct method. I walked back to the center of the room, slowly. You both misunderstand something, I said. Daniel frowned. What? I looked at him directly. I'm not here to fix anything. A beat of silence. Then I reached into the drawer beside me and placed a folder on the table. Neatly stacked documents. Printed emails. Financial records. Legal summaries. Daniel's eyes dropped to it instantly. What is this? He asked, voice tightening. I sat down calmly. This, I said, is what happens when you build a second life using the foundation of the first one. Sophie leaned forward slightly. What did you do? For the first time, I looked at her properly. Not as a threat, not as a replacement, but as someone who never understood the structure she walked into. I didn't destroy anything, I said softly. I just documented what already existed. Daniel flipped through the pages quickly. The more he read, the more still he became. Because now he was seeing something he didn't expect. Consequence. Not emotional. Legal. Real. His voice dropped. You planned this. I shook my head slightly. No, I said. You started at the moment you decided I was already out of your life. The room went quiet again. But this silence wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy with understanding. And something inside Daniel's expression finally shifted. Not guilt. Not love. Fear. Because he realized something too late. I was no longer the person he left behind. I was the part of his life he hadn't secured before walking away from it. And now, I was holding the version of reality he couldn't rewrite. The room didn't feel like a living room anymore. It felt like a courtroom that hadn't officially started yet. Daniel was still standing over the table, flipping through the documents I had laid out so carefully. Each page seemed to pull something out of him. Confidence, certainty, control. The things he had worn so easily were now slipping off him one by one. Sophie sat beside him, but she wasn't looking at me anymore. She was looking at him, and that was the first crack she noticed. Outside, rain finally began to fall. Slow at first, then heavier, tapping against the glass like the city itself was trying to warn him. I didn't rush them. I didn't explain. Because truth doesn't need speed. It only needs exposure. Daniel exhaled sharply. This isn't necessary, he said, though his voice didn't carry the same certainty anymore. I leaned back in my chair. Calm. Still. You built a second financial structure using shared assets, I said quietly. You moved money. You created accounts. You used information you only had because you were still legally tied to me. His jaw tightened. Sophie frowned. You said everything was handled. That sentence landed harder than anything I could have said. Daniel didn't look at her immediately. And in that pause, something changed between them. Just slightly, but enough. He finally spoke, voice lower. I was going to settle everything fairly. I almost laughed, but I didn't. Fairly, I repeated. He nodded quickly, trying to recover control. Yes, I wasn't trying to hurt you. That was where he was wrong. Because he still believed intention mattered more than impact. I stood up slowly and walked to the window again. The rain outside had turned the city into blurred lights and moving shadows. Do you know what hurts the most? I asked quietly. Neither of them answered. I turned slightly. Not that you left, I said. Not even that you chose her. A pause. It's that you planned a life where I didn't exist, while still using mine to build it. Silence. Sophie shifted uncomfortably now. Daniel, you told me it was already separated. Another crack. I watched him carefully now, because that was the moment he realized something important. He hadn't just been hiding things from me. He had been managing two versions of reality at once, and neither could survive being seen together. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. This is getting out of hand. No, I said softly. This is just getting clear. I walked back to the table and placed another envelope on top of the documents. This one was different. Thicker. Final. Daniel stared at it. What's that? I looked at him for a long moment, and then I said the words that finally made his expression change completely. Your bank flagged the transfers. The room went still. Even the rain outside seemed quieter for a second. Sophie blinked. What does that mean? Daniel didn't answer immediately, because he already knew. I continued calmly. It means the accounts you moved money through are now under review. It means the financial institution has been notified of irregular transfers between joint holdings and newly created personal accounts. His face tightened. You reported me? I shook my head. No, I said. Your own pattern did. That was the truth, he couldn't argue with. Because I hadn't needed to chase him. I had only needed to observe what he thought I would never understand. Sophie stood up now, suddenly unsure. Daniel, what is she talking about? For the first time, Daniel didn't answer her immediately. Instead, he looked at me. Really looked at me. And something in his expression shifted again. Not anger now. Not denial. Recognition. Because he finally understood something he hadn't before. I hadn't been reacting to his betrayal. I had been documenting it. Quietly. Steadily. Completely. And now it had weighed outside of this room. He spoke slowly. What do you want? There it was. The real question. Not how do we fix this? Not can we go back? Just survival. I stepped closer to the table. I want nothing from you emotionally, I said. A pause. Then I added, but financially, legally, you're going to return everything that doesn't belong to you alone. Sophie's eyes widened slightly. Daniel! But he didn't look at her this time. Because now the room had changed. She wasn't the center anymore. Neither was I. The consequences were. Daniel sat down slowly, like his body had finally accepted what his mind was still resisting. You're destroying me, he said quietly. And I looked at him without emotion. No, I replied. You did that the moment you thought I would stay silent. A long silence followed. Heavy. Final. Outside, the rain kept falling harder, washing the city in motion. And inside that apartment, something irreversible had already begun. The rain didn't stop. It stayed like a curtain over the city, turning every light outside the window into something blurred and distant, like the world was watching from behind glass, unable to step into what was happening inside that room. Daniel sat frozen at the table, not angry anymore, not defensive, just trapped between the life he thought he was building and the one collapsing in real time. Sophie stood near the couch now, but she wasn't speaking. The confidence she walked in with earlier had dissolved into something quieter, uncertain, as if she was finally seeing the shape of what she had stepped into. I remained calm, not because I felt nothing, but because I had already felt everything days ago. Now it was just execution. Daniel broke the silence first. "What happens now?" he asked, voice low. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked to the table and gently closed the folder in front of him. "The legal process continues," I said. "The bank investigation, the asset review, everything that was already triggered." His jaw tightened. "So that's it." I looked at him, and for the first time, there was something almost human in my expression. Not softness, not forgiveness, just closure. "This didn't start today," I said quietly. "It ended a long time ago. Today is just when it became visible." Sophie finally spoke, her voice unstable now. "I didn't know it was like this." I turned slightly toward her, and I didn't feel anger toward her anymore either. Just clarity. "You knew enough," I said gently. "You just didn't ask the right questions." That hit her harder than anything else. Because silence always carries responsibility too. Daniel leaned back in the chair, exhaling slowly like the weight of everything had finally settled on his shoulders all at once. For a moment, he looked older. Not physically, but in the way people look when they realize a version of their life is permanently gone. "I didn't think you'd go this far," he said. I nodded once. "I know." A pause. "But you also didn't think I would understand how far you had already gone." The room fell quiet again. No more arguments left. No more explanations. Just consequences sitting in between all three of us like something solid and unavoidable. Outside, the rain began to soften slightly. The storm was passing. Inside, something else was ending completely. Daniel stood up slowly. Not dramatically. Not angrily. Just carefully, like he was trying not to break what was already broken. "I guess I lost everything," he said quietly. I looked at him for a long moment, and then I said something I hadn't planned. "No," I replied. "You lost it when you stopped valuing it." That was the final truth between us. Not dramatic. Not loud. Just final. Sophie looked at him now, searching his face like she was trying to find the version of him she had believed in. But it wasn't there anymore. Or maybe it never fully was. She picked up her bag slowly. "I should go," she said. No one stopped her. Because some exits don't need permission. When the door closed behind her, the apartment felt even quieter than before. Now it was just me and him. But even that didn't feel like us anymore. It felt like the end of something that had already finished pages ago. Daniel didn't look at me when he spoke again. "Will you ever forgive me?" The question hung in the air longer than anything else. I walked toward the window. Outside, the rain had turned into a soft drizzle. The city was visible again, moving, continuing, surviving. Just like I was. I answered honestly. "I don't need forgiveness to move forward." A pause. I just needed truth to stop being hidden. Silence followed. Then I turned back one last time. Daniel was still standing there, but not as the man who once owned the center of my world. Just someone who had learned too late what it costs when you assume silence means weakness. "I hope you learn from this," I said quietly. And I meant it. Not for him, but for whoever he becomes after this. Because pain that isn't understood repeats itself. I picked up my coat. The door was open this time. I walked out without looking back. The hallway smelled different, cleaner somehow. Like the air had been waiting for this moment too. Behind me, the apartment stayed still. No shouting. No collapse. Just the final shape of something that had already ended long before the door closed for the last time. And as I stepped into the elevator, I realized something simple. I hadn't taken everything he loved. I had just stopped carrying what was never truly mine to hold alone. The elevator doors closed, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free without needing to become someone else to survive it.